In a small town called Maplewood, summer used to be a time of joy and laughter. Children played in the streets, parents gathered in squares, and the aroma of summer festivals hung in the air. But that year, a terrifying shadow loomed over the town. In recent months, a series of child disappearances had shaken the community, leaving a trail of despair and anguish. Whispers about what might be happening echoed on every corner, and the peace that once reigned was threatened. In his room, surrounded by piles of mystery books, Elijah tried to focus on a detective story, but his mind was far from the words printed on the pages. He couldn't ignore the distressed eyes of his neighbors, the whispered conversations among adults, and the feeling that something very wrong was happening. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Tamsin, his best friend, with a trembling voice that betrayed her concern. "Did you see the news?" she asked, anxiety showing in every word. "More children are disappearing, Elijah. We need to do something." The urgency in her voice made Elijah's heart race. He had always admired Tamsin's courage, but at that moment, the gravity of the situation hit him like a punch to the stomach. On impulse, he agreed with her. "Let's meet at the square. We need to talk to Juniper." Upon arriving at the square, Elijah felt the heavy, somber atmosphere that hung in the air. Parents, with faces marked by worry, frantically searched for their children, and the desperation was palpable. It was as if life had been drained from the town, and the innocence of children was at risk. Juniper was leaning against a bench, eyes wide as she observed the scene. It was evident that the trio of friends was united by fear and determination. "I can't believe this is happening," said Juniper, her voice almost a whisper. "What's happening to the children in our town?" Tamsin, always the boldest, suggested they investigate the abandoned orphanage on the outskirts of town. "They say that's where it all began. We need to discover the truth." Tamsin's gaze was firm, full of a courage that Elijah admired, but which also made him apprehensive. Juniper hesitated, remembering the urban legends surrounding the orphanage. "But what if it's dangerous? What if someone finds us there?" Doubt hung in the air, but Tamsin's determination was contagious. Elijah felt a wave of courage stirring inside him. He couldn't let fear paralyze them. "We need to do this. If the children are in danger, we can't just stand by." With a vague plan in mind, the trio decided that the following night they would explore the orphanage. As they walked through the square, the sun began to set, tinting the sky orange and pink, but the beauty of the twilight couldn't dispel the tension that enveloped them. The three friends looked at each other, feeling the gravity of the decision they had made. Each of them carried their own fears and uncertainties, but there was an unbreakable connection between them, a bond that, despite everything, united them in a common purpose. As they moved away from the square, Elijah looked back, watching the shadows lengthen in the empty streets. The weight of what was to come hung over his shoulders, but the determination to find answers and protect those they loved overcame the uncertainty. The abandoned orphanage awaited, and with it the dark secrets that could change their lives forever. Elijah's heart pulsed with a mixture of fear and hope as he prepared to face the unknown alongside his friends. What would happen next was beyond his imagination, but curiosity and the need to discover the truth were stronger than any fear they might feel. Elijah arrived at the Maplewood Library early in the morning, the soft sunlight entering through the windows and illuminating the shelves filled with dusty books. The smell of old paper and the quietness of the place created a conducive environment for the investigation he needed to conduct. With his heart racing and his mind full of questions, he headed to the local history section, determined to discover more about the abandoned orphanage that now occupied his thoughts. As he flipped through the yellowed pages of a book about the town's history, his eyes stopped on an old article dated decades ago. The title in bold letters read, "The Mystery of Maplewood Orphanage, Missing Children and the Director Who Disappeared." A wave of curiosity and apprehension ran through his body. The text spoke about the orphanage's director, an enigmatic man who had eccentric behavior and a reputation tainted by sinister rumors. The article mentioned cases of children who were never adopted, lost in the mist of time, and a feeling of helplessness invaded Elijah's mind as he imagined what might have happened to them. He read carefully, absorbing every word. One of the children mentioned was named Clara, and his heart raced as he recognized the name of the sister who had disappeared. The article described the sadness of those left behind, shattered hopes, and unfulfilled dreams. With each sentence he read, Elijah felt felt the weight of the mystery taking shape, and a growing determination established itself within him. He needed to solve this. As he left the library, the sky was now covered with dark clouds, as if the atmosphere itself was reflecting the gravity of the situation. Elijah knew he couldn't face this journey alone, and so he called Tamsin and Juniper, asking them to meet him at the library. He needed to share his discoveries and discuss a plan of action. When they arrived, the mood was one of expectation and tension. Tamsin's curiosity was evident in her eyes, while Juniper seemed nervous, biting her lower lip. Elijah, with the article in hand, began to explain his discoveries. The words flowed quickly, full of emotion, as he talked about the orphanage director and the missing children. At the mention of Clara, Juniper's expression changed to a mixture of compassion and concern. Tamsin, meanwhile, became increasingly involved, asking questions and formulating theories about what might have happened. It was then that the trio came across a dusty box, forgotten on a shelf. The box contained old photos, some faded, of children with innocent smiles. As they leafed through the images, a feeling of nostalgia and sadness enveloped them. Among the photos, one child in particular caught Elijah's attention. It was a girl with curly hair and a radiant smile, who seemed so familiar. He couldn't help thinking that she looked very much like Clara. His heart raced. What did this mean? Was it just a coincidence, or was there a deeper connection? The trio fell silent, the gravity of the moment enveloping them. The photos revealed not just faces, but untold stories, erased memories. Tamsin, with a resolute expression, suggested they needed to go to the orphanage at night. The idea of exploring that terrifying place now seemed inevitable. They knew they needed to face what was hidden in the shadows, what could reveal the truth about the missing children, and perhaps even about Clara. With the plan laid out, the trio said goodbye to the library, each immersed in their own thoughts and anxieties. The decision to enter the abandoned orphanage united them in a common purpose: to discover the truth, no matter how frightening it might be. And so, with determination pulsing in their veins and the echoes of the past drawing near, they prepared for a night that would change their lives forever. The night of exploration finally arrived, and Elijah, Tamsin, and Juniper gathered in front of the abandoned orphanage, a building that seemed to carry the weight of decades of secrets and misfortunes. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and the wind howled, making the nearby trees sway in a disturbing manner. The atmosphere was charged, and a chill ran down Elijah's spine as he looked at the deteriorated structure before them. The broken windows looked like empty eyes, watching them, while the entrance door, ajar, invited the three friends to enter its obscure past. "Let's go," said Tamsin, with a gleam of determination in her eyes, trying to dispel the tension in the air. Juniper hesitated, her eyes fixed on the door as if it were a portal to a dangerous place. The memory of urban legends circulating about the orphanage tormented her, and her heart raced with each step they took toward the entrance. Elijah, noticing his friend's hesitation, held her hand and gently pulled her, ensuring she wasn't alone. As soon as they crossed the door, a smell of mold and rotting wood invaded their nostrils. The interior was a labyrinth of shadows and echoes of children's laughter that seemed to resonate through the empty corridors. The light from Elijah's flashlight danced on the walls, revealing graffiti and drawings made by children who had passed through that place. The feeling of being watched increased with each step, as if the spirits of the disappeared children were there, observing and waiting. "This is strange," murmured Juniper, her voice almost a whisper. "Why are we hearing laughter? Shouldn't everything be silent?" "Maybe they're just echoes from the past," replied Elijah, trying to inject a tone of rationality amid the growing despair. "We need to continue. If there's any clue about what happened, we have to find it." The three friends moved forward, passing through abandoned rooms filled with broken furniture and dusty toys. Each new room revealed more mysteries: a hall where children used to gather, now empty and desolate, a kitchen with rusty pots that seemed never to have been cleaned, and in every corner a sense of sadness hung in the air. It was as if the orphanage itself was mourning the souls that never had the chance to grow up. As they climbed the creaking stairs, a cutting cold enveloped them. The upper floor seemed even darker, and the echoes of laughter became more intense, as if the children were calling for help. When they reached a corridor, a locked door caught Juniper's attention. She approached, feeling an inexplicable attraction. It was as if something was pulling her toward that room, a desire to discover what might be hidden behind that barrier. "Juniper, maybe we should think twice," said Tamsin, concerned. "We don't know what might be in there." But what if there are answers? What if the children are somehow connected to this?" Juniper replied, her curiosity overcoming her fear. She began trying to open the door, but it was firmly locked. Elijah and Tamsin exchanged glances, the tension between them palpable. What to do? The impulse to discover the truth was strong, but what if the truth was darker than they could imagine? "We need to decide now," said Elijah, his voice tense. "We can stand here or try to open this door. What do you think we should do?" The three friends found themselves at a crossroads. The orphanage, with its obscure secrets, challenged them to confront their fears. The idea that they could unearth long-buried truths, or perhaps bring to light what remained of the missing children, hung over them like a shadow. Whatever was behind that door could change everything, not just for them, but for everyone in Maplewood. With racing hearts and pulsing adrenaline, they knew that the only way forward was to face whatever awaited them. The door to the room opened with a deep creak, revealing a space that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The air was impregnated with dust and a smell of aged wood, but what really caught the attention of Elijah, Tamsin, and Juniper were the toys scattered across the floor. There were porcelain dolls with worn faces, wooden cars, and even an incomplete puzzle, as if the children who played there had suddenly abandoned everything. In the center of the room, a small table was covered with a worn diary, its pages yellowed and with frayed edges, as if they had been repeatedly handled. Tamsin, with a mixture of curiosity and caution, approached the diary. As she opened the cover, the sound of moving paper rang loudly in the almost oppressive silence of the orphanage. "Let me see that," said Elijah, watching closely as Tamsin began to read aloud. The words, written in childish handwriting, spoke of games, laughter, and secrets shared among friends. But as Tamsin progressed through the pages, the light atmosphere soon became somber. What began as a description of innocent games gradually transformed into accounts of fears and insecurities. "Look at this," Tamsin said, her voice trembling. "They talk about a game they needed to play to keep themselves safe." The tension in the air intensified as more words emerged. The diary described a kind of ritual that the children performed, something that promised protection against the shadows that inhabited the orphanage. But on the last page, in capital letters and almost illegible, there was a desperate plea. "If anyone finds this, please help us. We are lost." Juniper, who had been observing in silence until then, felt a chill down her spine. "This isn't good," she murmured. "What did they mean by lost?" Concern grew in her chest. The sound of distant laughter echoed off the walls, as if the children were still there, playing somewhere between the rubble of reality and the past. "Maybe they're still here," suggested Juniper, her voice hesitant. "We need to find them." Elijah, on the other hand, was absorbed by the idea of Clara. Desperation began to mix with determination. "We need to find out more," he said, the intensity in his gaze reflecting the urgency of his mission. "If Clara is somewhere in this place, we need to find her before it's too late." The fear he felt for his sister now transformed into a spark of courage, a force that drove him to unravel the dark mysteries surrounding the orphanage. "But what if we don't find anything? What if, after all, this is a trap?" Tamsin questioned, her voice full of uncertainty. Juniper's nervousness increased and she began to look around, as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows. The air seemed denser and the feeling of being watched grew with each moment. Elijah, however, was determined. "We can't give up now. We have to go deeper." With the diary in hand, the trio decided it was time to explore the rest of the orphanage. The pressure of time made itself felt. Each minute they spent there was a new reminder that the missing children, including Clara, could be in danger. The fear was palpable, but Elijah's determination was even stronger. He knew that the truth was there, hidden among the dusty objects and deteriorated walls of the orphanage, waiting to be revealed. As they moved through the space, the echoes of children's laughter continued to resonate, as if they were being guided by an invisible thread connecting the past to the present. With each step, the emotional burden increased. The silence of the orphanage was frequently interrupted by inexplicable sound, but the trio remained firm. They were ready to unravel the dark secrets surrounding the orphanage, even if it meant facing their worst fears. The journey was just beginning, and the truth they sought could be more terrifying than any of them could imagine. Elijah and Tamsin, determined to explore the orphanage, moved forward, each feeling adrenaline pulsing in their veins. The air was dense and heavy, as if the building itself was retaining ancient secrets. As they entered a file room, the dim light of their flashlights revealed dusty shelves, filled with folders and documents yellowed by time. The two friends exchanged glances, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension on their faces. Through the broken windows, the moonlight cast dancing shadows on the walls, as if the souls of the missing children were observing every movement. Tamsin pulled out a folder with Children's Registry stamped on the cover. Carefully, she opened it, revealing a collection of files that contained the names, ages, and stories of children who once called that place home. As Elijah examined the documents, his mind began to wander. He thought of Clara, his sister, and the pain of not knowing where she was. With each name they read, the anguish increased, but also the determination to discover the truth. On the other side of the orphanage, Juniper was alone in the basement, surrounded by an oppressive silence. She descended the stairs cautiously, feeling the cold dampness that seemed to infiltrate her skin. The place smelled of mold and despair. The flashlight flickered, creating shadows that seemed to move. As she delved deeper into the darkness, Juniper couldn't ignore the feeling that something was watching her. As she turned a corner, she came face to face with a mural on the wall, made up of photos of missing children. Her heart raced as she recognized, among the images, the smiling face of Clara. The scream that escaped her lips resonated through the basement, echoing like a desperate call. Elijah, Tamsin! Her voice carried the anguish of someone who knew she had found a crucial clue, but also an immense burden. Hearing her scream, Elijah and Tamsin left the file room, running toward the sound. When they reached the basement, the image that presented itself before them froze time. The photos pasted on the mural were a testimony to the tragedy that had unfolded there. Elijah was paralyzed, his gaze fixed on Clara's image, his heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Tamsin immediately noticed the pain in her friend's eyes and tried to console him, placing her hand on his shoulder. Elijah, we need to get out of here. This is horrible. But the intensity of the pain he felt prevented her from continuing. The reality of the situation was becoming unbearable. The atmosphere in the basement seemed to change, as if the space itself was reacting to the revelation. The walls, impregnated with untold stories, seemed to narrow around them. The trio felt the weight of the orphanage concentrate in their soul, revealing secrets that had been hidden for a long time. Whatever had happened there, the children were more than just victims. They were echoes of a past that refused to remain silent. We need to understand what happened here, Elijah murmured, determination beginning to take over his pain. If Clara is here, we have to find her. Tamsin agreed, but the shadow of doubt hung over them. Juniper, still in a state of shock, looked at the mural, and her hands trembled. This can't be true. We need to leave before something worse happened. But curiosity had taken hold of Elijah. He approached the mural, his eyes fixed on his sister's photo. Memories of their childhood together returned to his mind like a film, and he couldn't let it end there. I can't leave her. I can't. The words came out with a weight that resonated in the silence of the basement. The tension in the air intensified, and as Elijah tried to process the grotesque reality before them, Tamsin looked around, realizing that time was running out. We need to act. The orphanage may be about to swallow us. Elijah nodded, but his eyes were still fixed on Clara's image. What else could they discover? What secrets were hidden in the shadows, ready to be revealed? The only certainty they had was that the search for answers was leading them to an abyss that could be even deeper than they imagined. A quick shadow crossed the room, causing Tamsin's heart to race. She exchanged alarmed glances with Elijah and Juniper, who seemed equally perplexed. The environment around them was charged with a palpable tension, as if the house itself was alive and watching them. Tamsin, with adrenaline pulsing in her veins, suggested they leave immediately. The urgency in her voice reflected her survival instinct, but Elijah, overcome by a mixture of fear and determination, wanted to continue. He needed to know what had happened to Clara, and the idea of giving up now was unbearable. The atmosphere became even denser when a soft whisper crossed the air, calling for Clara. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deep within the orphanage, and the voice had an anguished intonation that made the three hesitate. Fear settled in their hearts. place, but the hope of finding some clue about the whereabouts of Elijah's sister propelled them to follow the voice. With each step, the darkness of the corridor seemed to envelop them, as if trying to swallow them. The walls, covered with mold and decay, seemed to draw closer, and the floor creaked beneath their feet as if protesting against their presence. At the end of the corridor, a hooded figure appeared, the indistinct silhouette projected against the gloom. The trio stopped in shock, the instinct to fight or flee battling in their minds. The figure seemed to float, and the tension in the air intensified like a thread about to break. Elijah felt his heart race, a mixture of fear and curiosity driving him forward, but his friend's hesitation kept him still. The hooded figure began to move slowly toward them. As it approached, Elijah realized that it wasn't just a shadow, but a manifestation of the orphanage director, a tormented spirit that carried the echoes of the children he had mistreated. The face, hidden under the hood, was indistinct, but the eyes shone with a deep sadness that seemed to cross the veil of death. It was as if every suffering he had caused was now concentrated in that spectral presence. Tamsin, despite her fear, felt a strange compassion and tried to approach. With a trembling voice, she asked the spirit to help them find Clara, but the figure reacted with an abrupt movement, revealing itself as a fusion of all the missing children. The collective lament of lost souls echoed through the room, and the vision made the three friends retreat, terrified. Elijah, in a moment of desperation, shouted for Clara. He wanted her to know that he was there, that he hadn't forgotten her. The figure turned slowly, as if it had heard his plea, and pointed at him with a skeletal hand. The gesture was both threatening and hopeful. The spirit indicated that Clara was in danger, trapped in a dark room, and that her fate was intrinsically linked to the dark past of the orphanage. The figure revealed that to free the children, Elijah and his friends needed to face their deepest fears. Tamsin, with her heart racing, tried to motivate her friends to continue, but doubt and dread hung in the air like a suffocating fog. The orphanage environment began to deteriorate, the walls trembling and the echoes of children's laughter intensifying, transforming into cries of anguish. The pressure on them increased with each second. Driven by determination, Elijah stepped forward, promising to save Clara, challenging the spirit to take him to her. The figure, in a final act of desperation, revealed to Elijah a vision of Clara, trapped in a dark room, begging for help. His heart broke at the sight of her, and a wave of despair washed over him. Tamsin and Juniper tried to pull him back, warning that he shouldn't trust the spirit, but Elijah's determination was stronger than his fear. He knew he needed to do something. The figure then presented Elijah with a painful choice: sacrifice his childhood memories or risk losing Clara forever. A heavy silence fell over the group. Elijah hesitated, memories of laughter, games, and happy moments with Clara flashing through his mind like snapshots, but the need to save her was stronger than any memory. In an act of desperation, he decided to sacrifice his memories, believing this would lead him to his sister. As he approached the figure, a scream echoed through the room, and Clara appeared briefly, but soon vanished into a mist. The memories Elijah sacrificed were the only connection he had with her. The orphanage then began to crumble in flames, while Elijah, Tamsin, and Juniper watched helplessly at the destruction, realizing that, even with the truth revealed, no child had been saved. Innocence was gone, and the search for truth cost more than they could bear. The pain of losing Clara would become a burden they would have to carry forever.